Hey there, survivors. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's episode. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. It really helps me keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now let's get started. I was halfway through my sandwich when the first call came in. Code red, multiple casualties, Navy Pier area. Dispatch voice cracked through my radio, fast, clipped. Units in the vicinity, possible mass assault, responders on scene requesting backup and medevac. Proceed with caution. Didn't sound like a gang fight. I was parked on Ontario, just outside the urgent care clinic. I bounced between shifts, spilled coffee in the cup holder, cracked phone on the dash. I hit the lights, threw the ambulance in gear. My partner Devin was just stepping out with a protein bar in his hand when I leaned on the horn. He didn't ask questions. He never did. Just climbed in and strapped up. The city felt too quiet for a Thursday. Streets weren't empty, not yet, but there was a tightness in the air. Storefronts with lights still flickering, cars rolling past like nothing was wrong, like the skyline behind them wasn't already changing. Helicopters hovered low. I counted 3, all city black. 1 banking hard over the lake, trailing smoke. We got to the pier in 5 minutes. Could have been 3, but traffic clotted on Grand. People had already started pouring onto the sidewalks, faces confused, some recording with their phones. Nobody was screaming. Not yet. The first body we saw wasn't on the street. It was slumped against a barricade, pale skin gone bluish, blood soaked into a torn bear's hoodie. Bite mark on his arm, huge, ragged. Not a clean puncture like an animal. This was wider, almost like the jaw was dislocated to make the bite. Devin leaned over to check for a pulse. I grabbed his shoulder and pulled him back. I don't think he's... But then the guy's fingers twitched. Not a seizure, not reflex, just a twitch, like something rebooting. We left him. That's not procedure, but we left him. There were officers already forming a cordon near the entrance to the Ferris wheel, shouting at civilians to get clear. Someone, tourist maybe, was screaming in French. I looked past the police line and saw the others. 10, maybe 12. Moving strange. Too stiff. Not drunk, not injured, just off. No rhythm in their walk, but determined. Like they were following a smell. One of them sprinted without warning. Launched forward, arms wide, tackled a uniformed cop and drove him to the pavement. The crowd screamed. Another one, a woman in torn jeans, skin shredded down one side, shoved past the barricade like it wasn't there, and went for a teenager who didn't even have time to drop his phone. That's when the gunshots started. Devin grabbed the trauma bag and ran toward the fallen cop, but I didn't follow. I couldn't. I was frozen in place, watching the others behind that woman push forward. Some were missing shoes. One had half his face gone, but they all moved like they were pulled by the same rope, fast now, teeth bared. The first wave of police opened fire, sent a mass, but it didn't matter. I saw one of them take 3 hits in the chest and still keep going, staggering forward until he was on top of another officer, tearing at him like he was nothing but meat. Devin yelled for help. I snapped out of it and ran. I don't remember drawing my shears, but I had them in hand. We reached the downed cop and dragged him back, leaving a smear of blood across the concrete. His neck was shredded, still breathing but barely. I pressed gauze to the wound while Devin tried to stabilize his vitals. But there was too much blood. Too fast. Too far gone. And then he opened his eyes. Not like a man in shock. Not like a person fading out. His eyes didn't look human anymore. They were clouded, grey, like dirty ice. He turned his head and snapped at Devin's arm, so fast I didn't even see his jaw move. I pulled Devin back and kicked the cop in the chest. He didn't feel it. Just scrambled forward on his elbows like an animal, jaw still working. The second I realized he was trying to bite Devin, I grabbed the defibrillator and slammed it into the side of his head. It worked. He stopped moving. We didn't talk. Just got back to the rig and slammed the door shut. I climbed behind the wheel. Devin was pale, shaking, holding pressure on his forearm where the dead cop's teeth had scraped his sleeve. Not broken skin, just cloth torn. He said, "I'm fine. I didn't believe him. We flipped the radio on. No answer. Just static and a repeating emergency signal. 5 seconds on, 5 seconds off. That's when the sirens started blaring through the city. Not ambulance sirens, not police. The citywide emergency alert system. The kind they only test once a year. The kind no one takes seriously. Until today. We turned onto Lakeshore Drive, heading north. I figured the hospitals would be lockdown zones by now, but we had to try. As we passed the foot of Navy Pier, I looked in the side mirror. There were more of them. Dozens spilling into the street, shambling in clusters, some on all fours, some limping like bones weren't fully cooperating beneath the skin. A few just stood still, twitching in place, heads cocked like they were listening. But most of them kept walking, north, like us, as if the whole city was one big current, and something was pulling everyone in the same direction. We hit 30 miles an hour, maybe 40. That's as fast as the ambulance could go with sirens off and the road starting to clog. Some of the infected had already made it farther up, pouring out of side streets, subway vents, even parking structures. I kept thinking, how did it spread so fast? That cop we found at the pier must have turned in under 5 minutes. Less. And the others were already infected when we got there. Meaning this didn't start there, it just exploded into view there. Devin sat in the passenger seat holding pressure on his sleeve, muttering to himself. I couldn't catch all of it. Something about his sister, something about his phone being dead. He kept glancing at the wound, even though it hadn't broken skin, just a brush. But I saw how white his knuckles were, how hard he was gripping the gauze. I didn't ask how he was. There wasn't time for comfort. Ahead, the lake shimmered against the skyline, sunlight slicing between clouds like it was any other day. But the road told a different story. Abandoned taxis with open doors, a city bus parked sideways across 3 lanes, its emergency hatch hanging open, windows smeared with something dark. I weaved around the wrecks as best I could, couldn't stop, didn't want to see what was inside. Then the radio chirped. Not dispatch, just an open channel, garbled voice bleeding through. Reroute all medical units. Repeat, do not approach Northwestern Memorial. Overrun. Infection confirmed. Devin leaned forward. That was Northwestern. They're gone. I didn't answer. Just tightened my grip on the wheel and took the Michigan Avenue exit. I had another idea. Reese Pavilion. A smaller trauma center. Not officially on the emergency coordination grid, but it had an underground level and local staff who wouldn't bolt, or so I hoped. As we reached the top of the ramp, a white SUV ran the red light and slammed into the side of a delivery van not 10 meters ahead. Metal twisted like foil. Both vehicles careened into a lamppost. I hit the brakes. We skidded halfway into the intersection. 2 men stumbled out of the van, one bleeding from the ear, the other dragging his foot. They weren't infected, at least not yet. But one of them pointed past me, wide-eyed, and I looked behind. The things were catching up. I hadn't realized how fast they were moving, at least some of them. One sprinted on all 4s across the median, skidding as it turned toward the crash. Another bounded over a low fence and went straight for the passenger of the SUV. She hadn't even stepped out before her door was ripped open. The scream never really formed, just a gurgle, then a muffled thud. Devin opened his door. "What are you doing?" I snapped. "We have to get them out, those 2 guys, before—" But I already knew. It was too late. The things moved too fast now. The 2 men from the van were surrounded. One tried to swing a tire iron. He didn't make it past the first swing. The other backed up against our bumper and slammed his fists against the side of our rig, begging to be let in. Devin hesitated. I didn't. I hit reverse, floored it, and twisted the wheel. The man fell backward, screaming. I turned away before I saw what happened next. Not because I didn't care, but because we couldn't help anymore. Not like this. "You left him," Devin said after a long minute. I didn't respond, just drove. Reese Pavilion came into view 2 blocks later. No sirens, no lights, which meant no organized response, or maybe no one left to respond. We pulled around the back, toward the underground ambulance bay. The door was down, which I expected, but the keypad still glowed faint blue. I parked. Devin grabbed the trauma bag and the radio. I pounded in the access code. It took 3 tries, hands shaking, sweat slicking the buttons. But then the door began to rise. Slow, groaning. Inside, the bay was dark. Fluorescent lights flickered on motion sensors, revealing 2 parked gurneys and a flipped wheelchair. Blood smears led toward the stairwell. No bodies, though, no sounds. We pulled in fast and closed the gate behind us. I slid the door control back into place and turned to Devin. We sweep the floor. We check for survivors. Then we regroup. Got it? He nodded. Quieter now. The steel edge was gone from him. He looked like a man unraveling in slow motion, threads snapping one by one. But he still followed me through the sliding doors into the corridor beyond. The reception area was empty. Chairs overturned, phone off the hook. On the wall, a poster about infection control hung half-ripped, soaked through with what looked like coffee. Or maybe something worse. We passed 2 exam rooms, both cleared. No staff, no patients. Then we heard it. Soft thumps from further down the hall. Not footsteps. Something heavier, unsteady. We crouched low, moved slow. At the end of the hallway was a fire door leading to the stairwell. The sound came again, this time a wet dragging noise, like something heavy being pulled across linoleum. Devin lifted the defib unit in both hands, ready to swing. I eased the door open a crack and peered through. One figure. Male. Hospital gown soaked at the back. His hands were bent wrong, fingers stiff like claws, nails black. He was pushing something with him. A gurney. No, not pushing. Holding onto it. Something lay on top. A nurse. She wasn't moving. I stepped back. Devin looked at me, waiting. "We can't help them," I whispered. And then the lights went out. Complete blackness. No hum, no flicker. Just gone. The emergency lights kicked in a second later. Red strobes, harsh and shallow. The hallway was a different place now. Shadows jagged and doubled. The infected man at the end turned his head like he heard the hum of backup power, then let out a sound I can only describe as wrong. Not a scream, not a moan, just wrong. Then he moved toward us, fast. I slammed the stairwell door shut, wedged the defib unit through the handle and turned. Back to the rig, now. We didn't run. We sprinted, down the corridor, past the abandoned stations, past the bloody poster, into the garage. The gate was still down. I punched the override as Devin jumped in the cab. Something thudded against the stairwell door behind us. Then again. Harder. Louder. I didn't wait for the third. As soon as the gate lifted high enough to clear the bumper, I threw it into reverse, backed out hard, and spun toward the exit ramp. We broke daylight seconds later, wheels skidding on wet pavement. The city had changed while we were inside. Smoke now rose from at least 3 points along the lakefront. A building on Ohio was on fire. Low flames licking from windows, black streaks curling into the sky. A woman ran past the alley across the street, barefoot and bleeding. Behind her came 2 more of those things, lurching, arms swinging wide like they didn't care what they hit. Devin looked straight ahead and whispered, "There's nowhere to go." I didn't answer, not because he was wrong, but because I could see what was coming down the street behind us. A whole line of them, 24, maybe more. Not marching, not even running, just moving, straight at us. I hit the gas. The ambulance tore past a burned-out sedan, its front end buried in the concrete divider. Sirens still silent. Lights off. We weren't announcing ourselves anymore. That was the first rule forming in my head now. Stay quiet, stay small, stay mobile. The infected didn't seem to rely on vision the same way we did. But sound? Sound drew them like magnets. And once they saw you, really saw you, there was no outrunning them unless you had wheels and an open road. We didn't have either, not for long. I swerved onto Fairbanks and sped west toward Columbus. We had to cut through the loop before more streets got choked with cars. Devin stayed silent. He kept his eyes on the side window, tracking the rooftops and alleys, muttering account of the infected we passed. I didn't stop him. Maybe it helped him cope. Maybe it didn't, but the numbers he whispered kept rising. 7, 8, 9 more down that alley. 2 dragging something, 1 on the car roof. I almost told him to stop. Instead I said, "We need fuel soon." He nodded. "There's a service station on Wabash near the bridge." "I know it. But it's tight. No exit on the west side. I'll make it work." The station came into view like a half-remembered dream, sunlight bouncing off its broken canopy, debris scattered across the pavement, one pump hanging by its hose like someone tried to rip it out by hand. I turned in slowly, checked all corners. No movement yet. I killed the engine. Devin jumped out and secured the perimeter with the crowbar we pulled from the rig's emergency kit. I ran the card at the pump. Nothing. Dead reader. I tried another. Nothing. Power was out. I circled the back, found the maintenance door, and pried it open. Inside was dark, the floor sticky with spilled soda and old oil. A generator sat in the corner, gas-powered, untouched. I waved Devin over. He nodded and went back to the rig for siphon gear. I peeked past the soda racks and saw them through the front windows. 3 figures stepping over broken glass, faces slack, jaws loose, walking like they were made of hinges and rope. I motioned to Devin. We dropped low, waited. The glass cracked under their feet, but they didn't pause, didn't sniff, just passed by like they hadn't noticed the noise. And then one stopped, turned. Head twisted toward the generator behind us. It wasn't loud, just a hum, but in the silence of the ruined city it was a beacon. The thing's face stayed still, but its body tensed, knees locking, fingers splaying wide. I heard the pump click off outside. "Go," I whispered. "I'll kill the gen." Devin hesitated. "Go," I said again. He moved. I reached for the switch as the figure stepped fully through the glass door. No rush, no urgency. Just the awful certainty of something that knew exactly where you were. I cut the power. Darkness again. The thing stopped. Head tilted. Listening. I pressed myself flat against the wall, barely breathing. I could smell it now. Sweet rot. Like garbage left in summer heat. Its feet scraped the floor just inches away. I counted seconds. 10, then 20. I didn't hear it move. Maybe it was waiting too. Then a horn blared from outside. The thing lunged toward the sound. Devin had laid on the rig's horn and was already climbing into the cab when I burst out of the store. I jumped into the passenger side as the infected slammed against the rear doors. Devin threw it in gear, and we peeled away, fishtailing through the street like it was iced over. "Not doing that again," he said between clenched teeth. "No argument here." We'd barely made it 2 blocks when the loop came into full view, and with it, the collapse. It was like watching a body shut down. Office buildings wide open, windows smashed, sprinklers still running in places. Streets gridlocked with cars that weren't moving, even though some were still running. Doors flung open, horns wailing. One intersection looked like it had turned into a makeshift barricade. Trash bins stacked with chairs and rebar. Someone had tried to hold it. They didn't succeed. As we slowed near Monroe, a man bolted out of a bank lobby and waved frantically. Suit jacket ripped, tie flapping like a flag. I started to slow. Devin reached across and grabbed the wheel. "Don't. He's alone. He's loud." "I'm opening the side door. You open it, you invite everything." I hesitated, then opened the door anyway. The man sprinted straight toward us, waving. "Please, please don't leave me." His voice cracked halfway through the sentence. A raw edge that didn't come from exhaustion. It came from desperation. The kind of desperation that hangs in the air like smoke, thick and contagious. Behind him, the bank doors swung closed on their own. Wind, maybe, or something else. It didn't matter. Then from the alley behind him, they poured out. Not dozens, hundreds. They didn't scream, didn't roar, just emerged like a tide spilling over a seawall. Silent, sudden, relentless. Their feet slapped concrete in unison, their heads jerking toward movement like puppets on cut strings. A wall of them, clothes shredded, some barefoot, some with faces half-peeled, eyes glazed white. The kind of sight that tells you instantly, there's no mercy here. No running, no climbing, just moving. But they never stopped. The man reached us just as the first infected cleared the alley. He stumbled, almost went down. I leaned out, caught him by the collar and yanked hard. He crashed into the back of the rig, breath heaving, briefcase still gripped in one hand like it held oxygen. I slammed the door shut just as the closest one lunged. Its hands slapped the rear window, blood smeared from the tips of blackened fingers. Devin didn't wait for instructions. He floored it. The ambulance roared forward, tires spitting gravel and broken glass. We clipped a mailbox and narrowly missed a stalled patrol car with its doors still open. The infected vanished behind us, shrinking in the mirrors like shadows in retreat. But they didn't chase. Not at first. They just stood in the road, watching, waiting for the next noise, the next mistake. The new guy, mid-30s, maybe older, collapsed against the bench seat, wheezing. His tie was half torn, slung over his shoulder, and a thin line of blood ran down his temple. Not a wound, just a scrape. His eyes darted around the interior of the rig like he was expecting more bodies. "I thought I was the only one left," he whispered. "Everyone inside, God, they just..." He stopped himself, looked down, tightened his grip on the briefcase. I didn't ask his name. I didn't ask if he was bit. We'd check that later, if we lasted long enough. Devin drove in silence, the kind that thickens with every block. I scanned the side streets, watching for movement. Each one looked worse than the last. LaSalle, burned-out bus across the intersection, front axle bent like paper. Clark, a storefront with its gate halfway pulled down, handprints smeared in dried blood along the glass. Dearborn, a minivan parked against a fire hydrant, one tire still spinning, back doors wide open. Then the smell hit us, thick, acrid, charred metal and rot. We passed a hot dog stand with a pile of bodies stacked like logs beside it. Not organized, just dropped. Torn, pieces missing. A child's bike lay nearby, neon pink frame twisted, the front wheel still turning slowly in the breeze. Devin said nothing, but I saw the way his eyes kept checking the mirrors, as if something was behind us, as if he didn't believe we'd actually gotten away. Then I saw it, a National Guard truck, flipped on its side at the far end of the block, half its tires shredded, hood still smoking faintly. Black scorch marks crawled up the side of a nearby building. Debris scattered across the pavement, ammo boxes, a flak vest, someone's boot. 4 soldiers lay crumpled on the ground. I tapped the window. "Pull over." "What for?" "Weapons." Devin hesitated, just for a second, then braked hard and slid the rig sideways between a line of dead cars. We got out together. The air was thick with smoke, but the scene was quiet, too quiet. No moaning, no footsteps, just the wind pushing trash across the street in slow, hollow gusts. I reached the first soldier. She couldn't have been more than 20. Helmet cracked, chin strap snapped, one arm pinned beneath her. Her face was intact, eyes open, still. No signs of a bite, just shrapnel wounds peppered across her torso. She'd bled out, probably in minutes. The rifle under her was still hot to the touch. I said a quiet thank you and pulled the weapon free. It was an M4 variant, light, clean, optics intact, safety off, one extra mag in her vest. I took that too. Devin knelt by the second body, a heavier man, dark skin, still clutching his radio in one hand. The unit was shattered. His chest had a hole the size of a fist. No crawling, no twitching, just finality. Devin took his sidearm and handed me a second one from a nearby pack. 2 more over here, he said. Same injuries, same ending. The truck's side door had been peeled open from the outside. Not with tools, with force. Something had ripped the latch off. Not smart, just desperate, fast. We didn't speak. We each took a pistol and a pair of mags. Not because we wanted to shoot, but because sooner or later we'd have no choice. The city wasn't giving second chances anymore. It was only offering time, borrowed time. As we got back in, the man from the bank looked up. "Are we going somewhere safe?" I didn't answer right away. Devin climbed behind the wheel, jaw locked. He wouldn't even look at the guy. I scanned the skyline. The streets were thick with smoke now, light grey, chemical. Somewhere south, a transformer must have blown. The loop's eastern edge was darker than it had been minutes ago, and the buildings looked gutted, stripped of power and people alike. I stared back at the man. "No," I said finally. "Nowhere is safe." His mouth opened like he had something else to ask, but he closed it again. Maybe it hit him that the suit, the clean shoes, the briefcase in his lap, they didn't mean anything anymore. The rules had changed. The city wasn't ours now. We were borrowing space, minutes, distance, anything we could still control. I told Devin to turn west. "We need somewhere to hold out, recharge, regroup." "For how long?" he asked. I shook my head. "Until we know where it's worse." We took Washington Boulevard past Wells. Traffic had thinned, not because the roads cleared, but because so many vehicles had been left mid-turn, doors open, engines dead or running. We passed a cab with blood on the windows, a minivan rammed into a light pole with 2 child seats in the back. No sign of the driver, no sign of the kids. Devin turned down the volume on the radio. Static had started to pulse again. On, off, on, off. 5-second cycles. That tone was everywhere now. Every frequency we scanned played the same thing. The man behind us finally spoke again. "I'm Martin Clay. I work in finance." I nodded. "Okay." I was on the 36th floor when the first alert came through. Building security told us to stay put. How many listened? Most. He looked out the window. I waited too long. Then the elevators stopped working. I took the stairs and saw them halfway down. Devin broke his silence. "You get bit?" Martin shook his head. "I don't think so. I didn't get close. They were chewing." He stopped, swallowed. "No, I ran. I didn't look back. I don't think they saw me." "Let's hope not," I said. We turned onto Racine and headed south, further away from the main crush. This far west, the damage looked different. Less chaos, more abandonment. Like people just left. Homes with lights still on, lawn sprinklers running, cars parked neat in driveways, but no voices, no music, no laughter or foot traffic, just the hush of a city closing its eyes. Devin finally eased off the gas and rolled us into a back lot beside a brick-walled middle school. "This work?" I nodded. "Let's find out." The school was old, the kind built before security cameras and steel-reinforced doors, the kind with tall glass windows, wide hallways, and too many entrances. But it had one thing we needed: space. Space to separate ourselves from whatever was coming next. We backed the ambulance into a loading dock and used one of the gurneys to block the ramp. I went in through a shattered office window while Devin stood watch. Martin stayed in the rig, face pale, still holding the briefcase like it meant something. Inside, it smelled like pencil shavings and dust. No rot yet. No blood on the walls. Good sign. I moved slow, flashlights sweeping left to right. Classrooms sat frozen mid-lesson. Desks tipped, notebooks open. One room with a half-solved equation still scrawled across the whiteboard. A child's backpack lay in the middle of the floor, crushed underfoot. I picked it up, looked inside. Crayons. A juice pouch. Nothing useful. Back in the hallway, I found the security closet. Door was ajar. Inside, 2 radios, both dead, and a wall panel for internal locks. Battery backup flashing red. Power was cut to the system. We'd have to secure everything manually. I headed back and waved Devin in. We picked 2 rooms near the rear exit, one to rest, one to stage. The nurse's office was intact. Still had bottled water, some basic meds, gauze, a broken thermometer. Devin checked the perimeter while I found a broom closet and stacked chairs against both doors. I ripped out the intercom phone cord and used it to tie the handle shut from the inside. By nightfall, We were running by flashlight only. I didn't dare turn on the rig's battery-powered lights. The glow would bleed right through the windows. Instead, we lit one LED in the hallway and kept it dim. We took turns watching the front. I made a sweep once an hour. The halls never stayed quiet for long. We started hearing things after sundown. Footsteps outside, distant crashing. Once a scream that didn't end so much as it faded into a choked gurgle. Martin couldn't stop pacing. "You should try to sleep," I told him. He shook his head. "Can't. What if they find us? Then we move." "And go where?" I didn't answer. There wasn't a good one. Later, Devin sat beside me near the teacher's lounge, nursing his arm. The scratch still hadn't broken skin, but he kept checking it, holding it under the light like he was trying to see something he couldn't name. I didn't say anything. He noticed. "You think I'm infected?" "No." "But you're watching me." "I'd do the same if it was me." He nodded. "Fair." He turned the sidearm over in his hands. "What if this is it?" "What do you mean?" "This, the end of it all. Not just the city, not just Chicago, everything." I looked around. Outside, a wind had kicked up, tossing paper and debris through the lot. The moon broke through the clouds just enough to backlight the broken fence behind the school. The wind didn't smell like lake air anymore. It carried heat, ash. Somewhere, something was burning, and it wasn't dying out. I said, "Then we survive anyway." Devin smirked. "You always believe that?" "Don't have to. Just need to act like I do." That night, none of us slept. Martin started talking to himself after midnight. Devin dozed off once, but jolted awake when a loud bang echoed from the far hall. I kept my hand on the rifle the whole time, never dropped it. At some point near dawn, I saw something move past the gymnasium window. Just a blur. One shape. Not running, just walking along the glass. I didn't breathe. Waited. It didn't come back. At first light, we packed what we could. Martin wanted to stay. "It's quiet here," he said. "They haven't found us. Maybe they won't." Devin looked at me. "He's not wrong. We've got water, some meds, cover." I shook my head. "There's no food, no long-term power, and if we're stuck here when they do show up..." I didn't finish the sentence. They both knew what I meant. We cleared the south entrance and rolled the gurney out to the dock. The rig started on the first try. We didn't speak for a while. The sky was turning orange, the kind of light that feels like promise. But it wasn't. Not today. Devin drove. I kept watch. And then the radio crackled. Not static, not tones. A voice. "Anyone receiving this? Tower 16, repeat. Tower 16 is active. We have food, power, armed perimeter. Broadcasting from Navy Pier relay." Navy Pier. The place where it all started. I looked at Devin. "Did you hear that?" He nodded slowly. Martin leaned forward, desperate. "They have power. They're organized. We have to go." Devin glanced in the mirror. "Back to Navy Pier?" I looked outside. The sun had cleared the buildings. Smoke still curled from the east. Somewhere behind us, the city moaned as one. "Yes," I said. "Back to where it started." No one argued. The radio had spoken clearly. Tower 16, food, power, armed perimeter. It didn't matter if it sounded too good to be true. Even if it was a trap, it was the first voice we'd heard in almost a day that wasn't screaming. In a city swallowed by silence and teeth, a human voice offering shelter wasn't something we could ignore. Devin turned east without a word. The rig groaned, low on fuel and heavier than it had been the day before, but it moved. That was all that mattered. Martin sat in the back, hands resting on his knees. He looked smaller now, less like a banker, more like a refugee. The briefcase was gone. I think he left it in the school. I didn't ask. He'd stopped talking, and I was fine with that. Devin kept both hands on the wheel, steering around wreckage with more aggression now. Each block felt like a countdown. The closer we got to Navy Pier, the more wrong the city began to feel. Not louder, not busier, just watched. Like the buildings themselves had grown eyes, like behind every shattered window and half-closed curtain was something that had stopped pretending to be human. We passed a traffic circle where someone had built a ring of burning tires around an old SUV. A spray-painted sign read "Quarantine" inside. I didn't look too close. Every street closer to the lake had more abandoned shoes than people. That was what really stuck with me, shoes. Strewn across sidewalks, caught in drains, half sunk in puddles. All different sizes, men's, women's, kids. As if the people in them had just evaporated mid-stride. Devin noticed too. I caught him scanning the ground more than the mirrors. We reached the intersection of Grand and McClurg by mid-morning. The road ahead was blockaded, haphazardly, not military. Dumpsters rolled into place, traffic cones stacked into loose pyramids, broken fencing leaning at an angle. Spray paint again. No exit, dead ahead. Beyond it, the Ferris wheel was visible over the rooftops. Navy Pier. "We're close," Devin said, slowing the rig. "But I don't like this. No guards, no checkpoints, just a warning." I unbuckled my belt and leaned out the window. Still no movement on the street. A few burned-out husks of cars, graffiti tags in a dozen colors, and blood smeared along the sidewalk in patterns that didn't look like someone had fallen. They looked like someone had been dragged, multiple times. I pointed. "That alley. We can go around the barrier." He didn't argue. We pulled the rig between the tight buildings, bumping over cracked pavement, the walls pressing close on either side. Trash spilled from bins. A dead cat lay half inside a fast food bag. The smell had changed again. No longer just rot, but the dense chemical stench of disinfectant and old fuel. Ahead, the alley opened into a side road that led toward the pier's rear gate. That's where we saw the first body. Human. Recent. No bite marks. Just a bullet wound, straight through the temple. The man had dog tags and a radio on his belt. The radio was still hissing, an open mic, feeding nothing but static. His rifle was gone. Martin spoke for the first time in an hour. "Soldier?" "Guard," I said. "Perimeter, maybe. Looks like someone took his weapon and left him. Or someone didn't want him talking." I didn't respond to that. Devin rolled over the body carefully, wheels just missing the man's legs. We crept forward another 100 feet until the edge of Navy Pier came into full view. The structure looked intact, mostly. The Ferris wheel still stood. The entrance was partially barricaded, but cleanly done. Military style. Sandbags, reinforced mesh, clear fire lanes. 2 towers at either side had makeshift lookout posts. Flags of some kind fluttered, but I couldn't make out the symbol from this angle. Devin stopped the rig. "Doesn't look abandoned." Martin sat up straighter. "Then why no response on the radio since the last call?" "Maybe it's automated," Devin offered. "Pre-recorded loop." "Maybe," I said, but I didn't like it. I got out slowly, rifle slung low, no sudden moves, no raised voices. If there were people here, and they weren't friendly, I didn't want to look like a threat. The others followed. We approached the gate together, steps slow and even. I called out. We heard the broadcast. "We're clean. We're armed but not hostile. Requesting entry." No answer. I tried again, louder. Same words, same measured tone. Still nothing. Then a sound from the tower. Metal on metal. Boots scraping a ladder. A figure leaned out. Female. Mid-40s, dark cap pulled low, eyes behind mirrored sunglasses. She held a carbine but didn't aim it. "You weren't supposed to find this place," she said. I stepped forward a little. "We heard the signal. It's still transmitting." She glanced over her shoulder. "It shouldn't be. Power's been down since yesterday. Something's still sending." Her jaw clenched. "Then someone turned it back on without telling us." I pointed behind me. "We've got food, gear, fuel. We can work. We just need a place to..." She cut me off. I didn't say no. I said it wasn't supposed to happen like this. Then she waved us forward. "Enter slow, hands visible. Any sudden moves and the welcome ends quick." We passed under the gate as it creaked open. The rig barely fit through. Inside, Navy Pier had been converted. Shelters made from tents, old kiosks repurposed as barricade hubs. A water tank had been rigged near the fountain, solar panels mounted along the rooftop edges. This wasn't military. This was civilian ingenuity, a survival colony. Maybe a dozen people milling around, all armed, all thin and sunburned. The woman met us inside and introduced herself as Keisha Park. "Used to work radio for the Coast Guard," she said. "Now I'm just the only one left with a steady voice." Martin looked around, dazed. "Is this all of you?" She shook her head. "We had more. A lot more." "What happened?" "The wheel." I blinked. "What?" Keisha turned and pointed toward the Ferris wheel. 3 nights ago we heard something moving up top. Figured someone climbed it to escape a horde. We sent a team. Only one came back. Devin asked, "What did he see?" Keisha didn't answer right away. She just looked at the wheel. "He didn't say anything. Just sat down and started crying. Died the next morning. No wounds. Just stopped breathing." We didn't press her. She showed us where we could rest. An old exhibition hall with blackout curtains, 2 cots, and a food ration crate. We unpacked slowly. Martin collapsed without a word. Devin cleaned his arm again. The scratch hadn't changed, but he still didn't like how it looked. I sat by the window and stared out over the lake. Water shimmered like it had nothing to hide, but we knew better now. Nothing was clean. Not anymore. The lake was too still. No waves, no gulls overhead, no boats in the distance. Just flat, endless grey. Sometimes the water plays tricks, bends light, reflects things that aren't really there. But this wasn't that. This was something watching us back. Devin was still sitting on the cot, his arm resting on a bandage he'd rewrapped twice already. He hadn't said anything in nearly an hour. Martin was asleep on the floor, curled against his pack like it was armor. Keisha had gone back to the North Tower, promising to rotate patrols and check in every 2 hours. She didn't tell us what she expected to happen tonight. She didn't have to. I finally stood up and moved to the far end of the room, where a crate of bottled water and a half-empty ration box sat. I peeled open a foil pack of beef substitute and forced myself to eat. It was salty, sour, had the texture of boiled cloth, but I chewed it down. I had to. Weak people died first. That rule was forming now too. Across the hall, a pair of teenagers on lookout duty paced the stairwell landing. They looked barely 18, shoulders too small under borrowed vests, guns that didn't fit their hands. One had a baseball cap turned backward, the other a patched hoodie with faded writing. Go Cubs or go home. I doubted they'd seen a real inning in years. I walked over. "You boys got eyes on the water?" The taller one, maybe 17, maybe younger, nodded without turning. "It's quiet." "That mean it's good?" I asked. He finally looked at me. "No, it's never quiet unless something's close." I nodded and backed away. Downstairs, the main concourse had been turned into a sort of town square. Fold-out tables, a generator humming under a tarp, blankets over cracked tiles. Keisha stood near the fountain, talking to a short, barrel-chested man with dark glasses and a shotgun slung across his chest. She gestured toward the east wall, then pointed to the Ferris wheel again. I waited until she was alone, then approached. "Who's your second?" I asked. She glanced at me. "Calvin. He was a school custodian before all this. Now he's our quartermaster and general skeptic." "He think we're a threat?" She smiled, but it was the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "He thinks everything's a threat. That's why he's still alive." I looked up at the tower. "What about you? What keeps you here?" She shrugged. "Had a radio, had people. Then more people showed up. Then people started dying. Now I'm just trying to hold what's left." "You ever think of leaving?" She looked past me at the gates. "Every day. But the city's a mess. The lake's worse. And there's nothing past the suburbs but panic and fire. Still better than staying and waiting for whatever's out there to climb the walls." Her eyes hardened. "Maybe. but not if I bring everyone with me and get them killed. That was the most I'd heard her say since we arrived. I returned to our room and found Martin awake, sitting on the cot. His hands trembled slightly. Devon had propped his rifle near the window and was writing something in a notebook. I hadn't realized he was keeping notes. Martin looked at me. "How many people you think are still alive out there?" "Out there where?" "Chicago, the state, the country." I sat down. "Less than yesterday." He didn't like that. "You think it's just us?" "No, I think it's everywhere, but I don't know how bad. If the Pier's still broadcasting, maybe others are too." Devon spoke without looking up. "If they are, they're not using our frequency." I stood again and paced. The walls were too close, the air was too warm. I could feel the weight of the building pressing in. I needed sky. I climbed to the rooftop. It took 3 locked doors and 2 ladders. At the top, a metal hatch led to the viewing deck just behind the Ferris wheel. The wind was cooler here, stronger. It carried a smell that reminded me of old algae and dead batteries. I scanned the water. Something was out there. No boats, no birds, but a shape, low, flat. It moved with the tide but didn't drift. I narrowed my eyes. It wasn't a log. It was too regular, too precise. It was watching the pier. A soft thud behind me made me spin. Keisha. She climbed through the hatch and joined me at the railing. "You see it too?" I nodded. "It's been there since last night. It doesn't come closer, just floats, like it's waiting." "For what?" She shrugged. "No one wants to find out." We stood there for a while, not speaking, just watching. Then she pointed north. "Last week we sent a runner, woman named Tova, said she saw National Guard trucks moving toward Evanston." "She make it back?" Keisha shook her head. "No, but 3 days later someone picked up her voice on shortwave. No message, just humming, like a child." "Creepy," she laughed, short and dry. "That's one word for it." We climbed down together. Inside, the others were gathered in the food hall. Someone had made coffee over a camp stove. Martin was asking questions again, this time to a kid with a bandaged leg. Devon had folded his arms and leaned against a support pillar, eyes scanning everyone like he didn't trust any of them. I didn't blame him. I didn't either. Keisha gathered everyone and started issuing assignments. Perimeter checks, ration distribution, guard shifts. She was running this place like a fire station, rotating teams, keeping idle hands busy. It was smart. Fear gets in when boredom does. Give people something to do, and maybe they won't hear the city moaning through the steel. We took the second watch, rooftop observation, 4 hours. Devon sat beside me as the sun sank lower. "You think that thing in the lake ever comes out?" "I think it already has. That's just part of it." He nodded like he already knew. Then we heard the scream. It came from the north wing where the wheel tower met the stairwell. One voice, female, not one of ours. Keisha's voice echoed seconds later. "Lock down all sectors, eyes on the wheel!" We ran. I led the way down the exterior steps and into the secondary control room, where they'd kept equipment for repairs. The door was open. The scream had stopped. The air was still. Too still. The kind of stillness that meant either someone was hiding, or something had already happened. I motioned for Devon to hold at the threshold while I moved in first, rifle up. There was blood on the concrete floor, pooled near the corner where the breaker panel hung slightly open. A mop bucket lay tipped over, and a cracked flashlight blinked uselessly beside it. Then I saw her. Late teens, maybe. Face down, still breathing. Her ankle was twisted at an ugly angle, and one arm was bent beneath her in a way that didn't look right. She must have slipped down the stairs. No signs of a bite, but the scream had drawn attention. If not yet, then soon. Keisha came in behind us, gun low but ready. "Alive?" "Barely," I said, "but she's not one of ours." "Someone from the outer district?" Devon asked. "A runner?" "Maybe, or someone trying to get in." Keisha stepped closer and checked the pulse. "We don't have the time to guess." The girl groaned, but didn't wake. She was in shock, or close to it. Her shirt was soaked through from the fall, and her knuckles were scraped raw. But she hadn't been infected. Not yet. Keisha made the call. We carry her. I nodded. Devin found a stretcher against the wall, and we loaded her quickly. We hadn't even gotten halfway back to the main floor when the first siren cut through the air. Not ours. It came from the radio tower overhead. Short bursts, then a pause. Someone was signaling. A warning. Keisha's radio crackled. Gate 2. Movement. Repeat. Gate 2 perimeter breached. Incoming from the east side service ramp. I swore and started running. The girl bounced once on the stretcher, groaned again. Devin kept pace beside me, his free hand already going for the sidearm. Keisha called into the radio again. How many? A voice came back. Can't tell. Too many. They're not stumbling, they're moving fast. The compound was in chaos by the time we reached the stairwell, civilians sprinting for cover. One of the rooftop watchers was already down, his rifle clattering off the walkway. Another fired wildly toward the ramp, then went silent. Keisha grabbed my shoulder. Fallback point? Rig, we go now. Anyone who can't move gets left. She didn't argue. We pushed through the main concourse, cutting toward the ambulance. People screamed. Barricades were falling fast. The infected weren't moving like they had before. They were climbing, leaping, swarming, as if something had agitated them. I didn't know what set them off. Maybe the scream, maybe the signal, or maybe we'd just finally been found. We reached the ambulance. Devin swung open the back and secured the girl in place, strapping her in while Keisha waved over two others, one teenage boy and an older woman. No time to vet them. We just packed them in. Gunfire cracked from the north tower, short bursts, then a longer one, then none. I climbed into the passenger seat. Devin was already behind the wheel. Engine's warm. We're good. Then go, I said. The tires screeched as we pulled away. I saw Keisha running behind us, shouting something. Devin stopped just long enough for her to leap onto the side and slam the door shut behind her. We broke the east gate at full speed. Behind us, the infected spilled into the plaza. Dozens. No. Hundreds. I didn't look for long, just enough to see the pier swallowed in chaos. It had been a stronghold. Now it was a funnel. Devin turned us south, away from the lake, skidding past a row of abandoned taxis and into the wider streets. The radio was full of overlapping signals now. Chatter, partial coordinates, static-laced cries for help. It was spreading, not just in Chicago, beyond. Keisha checked her sidearm and turned to me. We're low on fuel. There's a station 2 miles down, off Cermak. She nodded. That's our next stop, but we don't stay. I looked out the window. The skyline behind us glowed orange. Fires were rising near the water. The Ferris wheel, once a symbol of the pier, was silhouetted in smoke. Then it vanished behind a tower. Martin spoke from the back, voice barely above a whisper. Where do we go after that? I didn't answer. We didn't know. No one did. But we weren't staying. That was the only rule left. Don't stop. Keep moving. Stay quiet. If we ran long enough, far enough, maybe we'd find another outpost, another group, another gate that hadn't yet been overrun, and if not, then we'd burn fuel until the tank ran dry, and meet the end on our terms. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more unsettling creepypastas. Your support keeps my channel alive. Until next time, stay quiet, stay vigilant, and trust nothing, not even the silence.